All right, and joining us now is Jonathan Zaslow, the host of the Zaslow Show on WQAM middays 10 to 2. Also the host of Preheat, pre and post for the Miami Heat audio experience on 790 The Ticket. Jonathan, Steven Strom here. How are you doing today?
Hey, yeah, I'm good. Let's do it, man. We're at a good time of year. We're at a fun time of the season. You know, the playoffs. The Heat have only been in the driver's seat here just 4 times in franchise history, which is kind of crazy considering how great a franchise they've been. So we're kind of in a spot here that we're not in very often. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we're going to bounce around. We'll do some Heat. I guess that's what we'll start with, because I got to be honest with you. Yesterday felt like a series win watching Brooklyn take care of Cleveland. And not only does Miami get to avoid Brooklyn in that first round, but they get to avoid Brooklyn and Milwaukee until, let's just say, we get to the Eastern Conference Finals. What was it like, I guess? I mean, it was a little bit relieving last night watching Brooklyn take care of business. I mean, how big can that be for the Heat?
I mean, me personally, I'm totally fine with if we would have played Brooklyn in the first round. I think that team stinks. I mean, Durant is amazing, obviously. And Kyrie Irving, while last night he was obviously phenomenal, you cannot rely on him for a second, all right? And the rest of that team is not good. They're terrible defensively. And they're going to play great teams every single night in the postseason, starting with Boston. I think Boston's going to smash them. So I was not concerned about having to face Brooklyn in the first round. But the part that I really do enjoy, which has happened, is, you know, you see these teams who like to mess around with the standings and who they're going to play, and they'll sit guys in the final couple of days because they don't want to be the 2 seed, they want to be the 3 seed and that kind of deal. And I'm really against that type of stuff.
And Milwaukee did that.
Yeah, and, you know, not only do I want my team to win, but just I'm really against it because I really think you're screwing around with basketball karma. I think you're screwing with the basketball gods. I think you go out there, you play, you win as many games as you can, let the chips fall there where they may, and everything will wind up working out. And guess what? The Heat did exactly that. They're the number 1 seed, and everything has really worked out because they're not going to play Brooklyn in the first round. They're going to play a much lesser team. I think it's going to be Atlanta, but they're going to play, you know, one of 3 teams who are going to be the 8th seed, and their side of the bracket's favorable. They'll then play the winner of Philadelphia and Toronto. I'm not a believer in Philadelphia. I think Toronto's really good. I think they're a live dog, but
100%.
I'm not a believer in Philadelphia. And then, you know, when it all boils down to it, you're going to have to play 1 out of the 3, Boston, Milwaukee, or Brooklyn. You don't play all 3. You're going to play just 1 out of those 3, and it'll be in the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think the Heat played it the way you're supposed to play it, and I think it all worked out.
I think that for the people, and that we know how the media has covered the Heat this year, we felt disrespect a little bit down here as far as what they've covered with the Heat. Even if you're not a fan of what that roster presents, which I don't know how you're not at this point, you have to understand the circumstance of where they're placed. And you kind of just alluded to it as they're not going to have to face Brooklyn, Milwaukee until the conference final. Or who am I forgetting?
Boston.
I'm forgetting Boston. So that's got to be something that you got to take into account. Now, Brooklyn. I like what you said about Brooklyn because and you're old school, just like me, which I like. I think that you don't want Brooklyn to just kind of cakewalk or not cakewalk to get to the final, because you want to believe that team basketball matters. You want to believe that continuity matters. You want to believe that these things still matter in the NBA. And I happen to agree with you. I look at Brooklyn and I say to myself, all right, Cleveland didn't play well at all yesterday. Kyrie virtually played perfect. Kevin Durant was great. But they still don't have a lot of depth off the bench. And for people that think that Ben Simmons is going to come back here and be a savior, Ben Simmons he's doing one-on-one work. I mean, they're posting a video of him shooting a free throw. Ben Simmons is not coming back. So I kind of walked away and I was like, I'm not as fearful as Brooklyn as I think I was maybe before.
No, I'm not afraid of Brooklyn at all. But if I were to play Brooklyn, I'm not afraid to play them now. If the Heat were to actually face Brooklyn, it's going to be in the Eastern Conference Finals. Mm-hmm. And if they play Brooklyn in the Eastern Conference Finals, I feel different about Brooklyn at that point than I do now, because if Brooklyn were to get to the Eastern Conference Finals, it clearly means they're playing really well.
Yes.
Now, I don't think that's going to end up being the case, but if the Heat do wind up facing Brooklyn now, that's going to be the Brooklyn team that people thought we were going to get at the start of the season. So that's a different animal to me. Again, I don't think we're going to get there, but it's why you'd rather face Brooklyn right now than Brooklyn in a couple of rounds from now. I don't think Ben Simmons is going to play. I'm pretty certain he's not going to play. It could be for one of either reason. It could be for number one, that he's just not going to get out there. All right. You know, this is a guy who is not interested in playing basketball right now. It could be for that reason, or it could be because he's actually not ready to play, and this team's going to have an early exit. So he's not going to be available to them because they're not playing ball anymore. They've been eliminated. So it could be one of those two reasons. You can pick whichever one he wants. I think both of them are accurate, but I'm not afraid of this Brooklyn team whatsoever.
All right, this pod's coming out on a Friday, so we'll talk about Tuesday night. Minnesota last night, huge victory. You know, I grew up a Timberwolves fan, so it was nice seeing them beat the Clippers Tuesday night. Wanted to get your thoughts here because Shaq and Kenny and Chuck, they really went in on Karl Towns, deservingly so. He came out, he was amped up. I felt like he was pressing, ended up fouling out. And they kept talking about, a big man and toughness and him being soft. I'm just kind of curious now because of how much the game is played. Like, there's not a lot of dudes that are just like posting up now on the block. Like Jokic plays out, Embiid plays out. In your mind, what makes a big man tough in 2022?
Well, I mean, I don't think he's soft. All right. I do think that Karl Anthony Towns played a really unintelligent game. Chris Finch, we saw this when the Timberwolves were here in Miami. He likes to roll the dice with the foul trouble. Okay. The exact same thing happened with Towns in the game here, where he picked up his fourth foul early in the second quarter. All right. And that happened again in the win against the Clippers the other night. And I'm okay with coaches doing, like, if Kyle Lowry picked up his third foul early in the second quarter and then he starts yelling back to the Heat bench, no, I'm good. No. All right, the coach is going to trust him. And I get that. But if you're Karl Anthony Towns, I don't understand how you can trust him when he picks up that third foul and you see what he got as the fourth foul and you see what was his sixth foul, all right, where he fouled out. Those are dumb plays.
Terrible.
You're way too aggressive if you're playing with foul trouble. They were dumb fouls. And he can complain all he wants about, they were fouls. All right.
And there was two offensive fouls last night.
And even if they weren't fouls, you're way too aggressive when you're in foul trouble. So tough job there for the coach. It was not like, I don't know how you're trusting that player. And he played a really unintelligent game. Now, as far as like the tough guy stuff, there aren't very many big men anymore.
You know what I'm saying? Like who's tough?
Game.
Like Jokic is not tough to me. Yeah,
I certainly don't think that Towns is not tough. But for essentially I know he was in the playoffs in 2018 and they got swept out of the first round. I believe they were swept.
5 games to Houston. It was gentleman's sweep.
Okay. So, but Towns he's never been out of the first round and number 1 overall pick, and you never been out of the first round. You got to be smarter. That was not a good postseason. Whether or not you want to count it as a postseason game or not, that was not a good start to the playoffs for him this year.
Was it, because I think two things can be true at once here. I do believe now I was sitting there and this is why I love that you're on, because you're coming from an objective standpoint. You have no stake in the game as far as the Wolves go. I was watching, enjoying everything and saying, all right, this is a bit of an overreaction, but at the same time, this team, this franchise has not had a lot of success, Jonathan. I mean, they just haven't. Where are you at? Was it an overreaction the way that they celebrated, or were you kind of okay with the energy that Pat Bev exuded after that victory?
Totally cool with it. I think we're in a place where if we're getting if you're being critical of people being excited, what are you upset with people being happy about? Let people be happy. People are happy, and you get upset people are too happy. It's stupid. Let people be happy. I got no issue. I certainly have no issue with the fans being that excited. That's a franchise that has literally done nothing. Okay,
nothing
in their entire existence. Okay, so you want to be happy that you want to do or die game? Great, be happy. Like, it was cool. That crowd was jacked up the entire game, as opposed to the game in Brooklyn. I didn't even know anyone was there. I mean, I don't know anyone cares about the Nets, but the game in Minnesota, like, they were fired up the whole game. Man, let them be happy. Let them be excited. Where I do think there was an overreaction was from Patrick Beverley. I mean, the way he was talking about how disrespected he was by the Clippers and them trading him. Hey, Pat Beverley, newsflash, you're Pat Beverley, all right? Yeah. It's not that big a deal that the Clippers traded you, all right? You're barely an NBA player. Patrick Beverley, if it were not for all the annoyance and the nuisance and all that stuff, I don't know that he's in this league, okay, as long as he's been in.
But that's his identity.
I understand, but it's not some type of disrespect where they traded you. I mean, get over yourself. It's not that big a deal. You're Patrick Beverley.
Jonathan Zaslow with us now. Let's circle. You know what? Let's end with the Heat. I want to talk about basement ceiling teams. Let's do an East team. Let's do a West team. Basement ceiling, meaning this team can lose in the first round or they can get to the freaking finals. The obvious one, I think a lot of people's mind, are Brooklyn. Let's try to go another way with this. Let's start in the East here. What's your basement ceiling team that can lose in the first round or get to the finals?
In the Western Conference?
We'll do East first.
Okay, yeah, probably Boston. I think Boston's going to smash Brooklyn. But I mean, look, if Durant has, four amazing games, I suppose Brooklyn could win. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would say Boston can be that team because they've been the best team in the Eastern Conference for the second half of the season. Okay. They had just an incredible push to that number 2 seed. So I would say Boston can lose in the first round, and Boston can also get to the NBA Finals. If we'll do the Western Conference a little bit tougher.
The Luka thing is just puzzling to keep him in the game like that. I mean, what are you doing, kid?
Yeah, and now Utah is a huge favorite in the first round.
Are they?
Now I don't think Utah is going anywhere because Utah's good and they're going to do nothing in the postseason like they always do nothing. Now they're probably going to win in the first round because Doncic is out. When otherwise, I don't know. But I think the team that could lose in the first round, and I think the basement ceiling team, maybe it's Golden State.
Golden State.
Golden State's a tough team to figure out right now. And,
a tough first round matchup
in the first round? Maybe. Maybe they could lose in the first round. At the same time, can they get to the finals? Can you meet Phoenix in the Western Conference Finals and, Steph Curry and Klay Thompson do their thing? Yeah, I suppose. So probably Golden State.
I would agree with you. I like Boston and I like Golden State as a basement ceiling teams. All right, let's do the Heat. Biggest surprise player-wise from a positive standpoint and then a negative standpoint for you this season?
Biggest surprise from a positive standpoint.
You can go in so many different directions with this.
Yeah, I think probably biggest surprise from a positive standpoint is I can't believe Max Strus is a rotation player. Yeah. I mean, going into this year, I never would have thought that. And now I really like it when he's on the floor. I think he's a good glue guy. I think he's reliable from 3, obviously. He'll take a charge. He's got no problem stepping in there and taking a charge. So I think Max Strus has probably exceeded my expectation. He's probably that guy. And what are we doing? Disappointment? Is that?
Yeah. Let's do negative. Let's do a player you had a little bit high expectations for, and they didn't, I guess, get to that point, or just disappointing in general.
And by the way, I should also probably I should probably shout out PJ Tucker in that spot too, because PJ's really struggled in the second half shooting. I mean, he was number 1 3-point percentage for the first half of the season, and now he can't even make the shot.
But the problem is he only takes 3 shots. I mean, he goes 0 for 3, and that's it. He doesn't get a lot of threes.
But he's clearly not the same as he was. It really has evened out. Okay, but for that first 2/3 of the season, I had him as the MVP of the team. I really did. I've been super surprised with how great he had been. So, Strus with a very loud shout out to PJ Tucker in that spot, who I think have absolutely exceeded expectations. I would say, from the negative side of things, it would probably be Kyle Lowry for me, but that doesn't mean that I'm not happy with what Kyle Lowry's done. I just think there were so many games throughout the season where he's only taken 3 or 4 shots.
Yeah.
And now Lowry did speak about it a month and a half ago. We got to get to a place where we don't want to get there right now, but when April rolls around, we want to be in a different place where we're playing our best basketball and yada, yada, yada. And so I think considering the way Lowry has played over the last couple of weeks, I think he's also talking about himself in that spot where he's kind of pacing himself throughout the season. And there is another level that he knows he has as well that he's been saving because of his age. And I think we've started to see that the last couple of weeks of the season. I'm hoping that is actually the case. But probably for me, it was Kyle Lowry. I just think there were too many games throughout the season where the Heat were struggling offensively, especially in the fourth quarter. And I feel like Lowry's a guy who can get them a good shot, and he wasn't doing it. So maybe Lowry's that guy for me.
Let me add on Strus, and then we'll do one more. I love Strus. I think that he has provided different playmaking, right? Because he's taken Duncan Robinson's spot. Obviously, we talk about the 3. He can do that. But I think the progression defensively, Jonathan, has been most apparent. I think that he's gotten so much better. Not necessarily in individual standpoints. We saw what he did in Boston. He had 2 big stops. Everyone wants to talk about the Tatum and Brown. But I think his team defense has gotten far greater. And I think the difference between him and Duncan Robinson is one has it feels like a pretty short-term memory. Like Strus can go 0 for 6, and then he can have 18 points in the fourth quarter. It wouldn't surprise me. With Duncan, it really feels like things need to go right for him in the beginning of the game for him to have a consistent, game. Would you agree with that?
I do think Duncan, if he starts off slow, the coach is much quicker to give him the hook.
Pull.
And maybe that's a little bit of what you're talking about there. But certainly defensively, Duncan's not good on that end of the floor. And he also does not get the benefit of the doubt from the officials. and that's, that's unfortunately not his fault, but it ends up hurting the Heat. And Max Strus, he has no trouble taking the charge. He's been right place, right time. He also can get to the basket and he can get up there and throw it down when that's not really something you'll see from Duncan very often. So I'm really surprised at how good he's been. And I like it that he's going to be starting out there. I would imagine he's going to keep that spot starting on Sunday.
Last one for you, a deeper playoff run down South Florida, the Panthers or the Heat? Man,
it's a tough one. I'm tempted to say the Panthers because when you look at, say, based in their respective sports, the Panthers are the better team. The Panthers are the highest scoring team in the league in the last 25 years. The Heat are not setting NBA records. All right. The Panthers are better at what they do right now than the Heat are at what they do. But the correct answer could be the Heat because that Stanley Cup playoff is always wide open. You can lose to anybody.
Yep.
You get a hot goaltender on the other side. Number one seeds lose early in the Stanley Cup playoffs all the time.
The parity is far greater. Yes. And
with the Heat, I mean, we've seen this Heat team essentially, minus Kyle Lowry, but we've seen this Heat team make a run. So I think you can make a case. I know that I'm straddling the fence on that one, but I think you can make a case for both teams. But if this is an answer for you, the Panthers are better than the Heat in their respective sports. So maybe that's the answer.
Jonathan, you're the best, man. I appreciate you. Follow him on Twitter at Zaslow Show. Again, host of the Zaslow Show on WQAM. Also catch him pre and post game for the Miami Heat. I will see you on Sunday. Thanks again for joining me. And let's go Heat.
Awesome. Go Heat.